Grace and Todd Stevens, you expect no less.
Oh, you're talking about that side. They go by the name Team Dapper, though other people generally refer to them as Team Non-Threatening Boys.
I like how they even have the matching hairstyles to go with it. all three of them.
Todd Stevens actually provides tie clips for Tannen and Brennan.
Well, of course. It's very proper of him. Todd will start off on Urza's Tower. Bursavich on a 6-card hand this game. So looking at our other ones, we do have for Tannen Grace his 4-color Delver deck against Jody Keith's lands. That's not really a surprise at all if you know Jody Keith. Also, not a surprise is Tom Ross playing Black-White Zombies. You pick the most aggressive option of the standard decks and assume that Tom will be playing it.
There was some question of whether he'd be splashing or not, I suppose.
Yeah. Interestingly this weekend, the consensus has been yes to the white splash. So we see Bauble, Street Wraith, Fetch Land, Street Wraith. Shock, Thoughtseize. So Bursavich will take half his own life points on this turn. Just under half as he Thoughtseizes. We're going to look at Todd Stevens' hand, though. We have Thought Knot Seer and Endbringer as our two, well, spells, I guess. Then he has an Urza's Power Plant, a second Urza's Tower, a Wastes, and then looks like Ghost Quarter. Yeah. So Thought Knot Seer is gone. That's going to leave Todd with a bit of a mash of things. Does find Expedition Map this turn.
That one's a lot better on turn 1 than it is on turn 2, but it's still significant.
What I always find interesting then is, do you map for the Tron piece or do you map for the Temple?
I assume it's generally going to be the Tron piece.
Okay, yes, yeah, this will find Tron on the next turn. I guess at getting to 6, they're the same speed. It's a turn 4 Endbringer. So Bursavich put himself to 11 on turn 1. Now it continues to go down to 8. There's not much risk of going this low on life points in this matchup. I guess by doing this, there's a danger that if Todd just top decks Reality Smasher, Bursavich could lose.
Well, you know the card that Todd drew here.
Right, it's got Expedition Map. So he'd have to draw it. Bursavich will Fetch Shock Thoughtseize the Endbringer. So Bursavich puts himself down to 6.
Death Shadow does a real good job of blocking Reality Smasher.
Yeah. And Todd draws the 3rd Tron piece here. Not really. I mean, so in previous iterations, Expedition Map was great because then in this situation it'd find you Eye of Ugin. In Todd's list, does he have a land that can turn into a threat?
Over time, Seagate Wreckage. He has too many lands in his hands. Convert that before this Death Shadow kills him. Outside of that, his bullet targets are Cavern of Souls, but that doesn't matter here. It's really just lands that produce mana otherwise.
Good heads-up play from Todd here, though. He instead of playing the Tron piece because he has no payoff, he went for Ghost Quarter on Overgrown Tomb, which I actually really like.
You can potentially shut Bursavich off of some spells here.
Yeah, there's just no benefit in making another land drop. Every card off the top of his deck is castable. But here comes a hit of 7. Todd down to 13, and it's going to be Grim Flayer and a second basic from Bursavich.
And just one copy of Grim Flayer in the deck, though his deck, he does have a few new ways to hit Delirium. One copy of Cast Out from Amonkhet in the deck.
Do you think he ever casts it?
I think he mostly cycles it, but it's a totally reasonable spell to cast as well.
That's really neat. Todd withdraws here. Looks like he's still on lands. Yeah, it just draws Urza's Tower.
Now, let's say you're playing against one of the green forms of Tron. They cast a Worm Coil Engine. Cast Out's a nice one to have in that spot.
Another Ghost Quarter from Stevens. Right now, Bursavich only has, it looks like, 11 points of damage. A Street Wraith or a Fetch Shock could do that. Last couple points. Street Wraith looks like it was the draw for Bursavich, so we may be going to a second game. Could check Delirium here. Inquisition of Kozilek, that's fine. That adds sorcery. So sorcery, artifact, creature, land in Bursavich's graveyard. He has that Bauble, meaning Death's Shadow is a is a 9/9. Grimflayer is a 4/4. That adds to 13, and Bursavich takes the win.
Yep, checks out.
It's the scariest part of Abzan Death Shadow is how they can Thought Seize you 3 times and then kill you on turn 4 in the same game.
Right. They're not only stopping you from playing your game, but also executing theirs pretty easily from there.
Yeah, it's when you look at a deck like Jund, right, which used to, Thought Seize Goyf, and you're like, oh man, it's so good. At least when I played combo, I felt, well, all they did was like play a Goyf, right? So I got a couple turns to maybe, like when I play a Titan deck, Primeval Titan, I'd say like, well, they took all my things, but I have like 3 turns that if I top deck a Primeval Titan in these 3 turns, I probably kill them. Death Shadow gives you no such window.
And Death Shadow, the card, is singularly responsible for turning a lot of these 3-color decks matchup against Tron way more positive. It used to be the case that if you were any flavor of Abzan, Jund, and Grixis, your opponent played Urza's Tower and you were in a pretty bad spot. But the Death Shadow giving you that faster clock is extremely significant in these kinds of matchups.
So we're going to look at the sideboards. Todd Stevens down a game. Now remember, one thing you can say about Todd is he is an extremely practiced player. So does not show up to tournaments without a lot of games under his belt and a lot of plans for popular decks. So looking at his sideboard, got 3 Surgical Extractions, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Relic of Progenitus, and then 8 one-ofs. What do you think is our plan for the game?
There's there's some Delirium cards and Traverse the Ulvenwald out of Bursavich's deck. He plays Tarmogoyf, so Relic of Progenitus seems pretty significant. Not Cage. Cage doesn't really meaningfully impact any of that, but the Relic at least will keep up on what matters out of the graveyard. Ratchet Bomb is a pretty solid answer to any number of Death Shadows. You can also tick it up to Tarmogoyf, Grimflayer, what have you.
Right.
Dismember has a short window, but it can matter a lot. Batterskull you can convert. If you're in a spot where your Eldrazi are smaller than Shadow, Batterskull can pull you out of that. All his dust is reasonable. It can catch you up no matter how far you are behind on the board. Having the sweeper effect is pretty significant. I like the 4th Chalice a good amount. Only 3 in the main deck. There's a lot of 1-drops in this other deck. And Wormcoil Engine is also just this huge life-linking thing that can always trade with Death Shadow and replace itself.
So it looks like a lot of his sideboard is actually improvements going across it,
Yep.
So I guess then I might look at the cards that don't carry the weight in the main. I mean, these just seem like maybe upgrades.
Yeah, over a lot of this stuff. I'm really not too into Walking Ballista in this matchup.
It's not going to kill much.
No.
I guess
in theory, it can kill your opponent, so maybe you want to leave in some small number. But casting it on turn 2 is usually going to be pretty underwhelming.
If you get it with Basilisk Collar, it could win the game. But that may be a little slow for this matchup, especially you need a 2-card combo and you need neither of them to get Thought Seized.
Right.
And that's probably too much to ask for.
Right.
On Austin Bursavich's side, it's got some Grafdigger's Cages, Fulminator Mages, Stony Silence, Collective Brutality, Lingering Souls, Nihil Spellbomb, Scavenging Ooze, Painful Truths, Ranger of Eos, and Liliana, The Last Hope. A lot of these cards fall into 2 categories. They're hate cards for certain strategies, and then they are cards that let him go bigger against removal.
The go big strategy, not terribly relevant in a matchup like this. A lot of players, if you're newer to Modern, you might reach for Fulminator Mage because this is a Tron deck, the lands matter.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It's not that effective against the Eldrazi Tron deck, unless you can already pull significantly ahead because they can just have these Eldrazi Temple games. The slam dunk here is Stony Silence. You can start off a lot of the stuff that Steven's deck is doing, Expedition Map, Mind Stone, stuff like that, Walking Ballista potentially. But turning off Expedition Map is Todd Stevens says that Stony Silence is one of his least favorite cards to play against.
All right, players are underway here for the second game. Bursavich, we see from Todd Stevens, a turn 1 Expedition Map off Eldrazi Temple. Bursavich is going to cycle 2 Street Wraiths, Shock, and Thoughtseize. So that is dealing 8 damage to himself, putting himself down to 12. We'll look at Todd's hand. He has a Ghost Quarter as his only other land here. But in addition to that, he has a Ballista. Those actually have stayed in, it looks like. A Karn, a Thought-Knot Seer, and then a copy out of his sideboard of the Relic of Progenitus.
Relic and Thought-Knot Seer are the most immediately impactful cards out of this hand. If you take the Relic, then a Thought-Knot Seer is likely to happen to you in 2 turns. If Todd peels Eldrazi Temple, it could happen on the following turn. Karn is the most impactful card long-term, though for now it's not a huge concern, though Thoughtseize might be Bursavich's only way to really deal with that.
Yeah, and a lot of times Bursavich, especially because there's no Tron mana here, he'll find another Thoughtseize, I would think, before Karn happens.
And if he already has another Thoughtseize, then taking the Karn here is kind of right out.
There might be some consideration. There's only 2 cards here that can be hit by Inquisition. I guess, yeah, by being hit by Inquisition. So he almost wants to take a large card because of that. Thought Not Seer is the one he ended up taking. And what started as a close match might be turning into a rout. It's a full sweep for Bursavich and his teammates. Jody Keith in 1 lands and Tom Ross on zombies, both winning their game 1s as well. Where if that 5th win is the magic number in these matchups, your team can net 5 game wins. They win the round.
Yep.
On his turn, Todd makes his land and says go. It looks like we have another Thoughtseize coming from Bursavich. He goes to 8 to do this. Shocks with his land drop, casts Thoughtseize. Endbringer was added to the hand for Todd Stevens, so it's more heavy hitters here.
And if Bursavich does not have a Traverse or a Tarmogoyf in hand, then he can kind of shrug off the Relic of Progenitus. Endbringer and Karn Liberated both represent pretty serious threats.
Well, it's interesting here. So, because Todd's lands are Eldrazi Temple and Ghost Quarter, I don't know if he can cast Karn this game. Like, how's he going to get to that kind of mana?
Yeah, he's 3 Tron land short of a set.
Endbringer is way more castable, especially if you think this map is going to go find another temple.
Yes.
Because Todd has no 3rd land drop, he has to crack map this turn. I mean, he can't just, can't really wait on it. And I'd assume, given the board, he's going to get another temple. You see, though, Bursavich does take a copy of Relic and plays Death Shadow. It is a 6/6. It looks like Bursavich actually has 7.
Yep. And there's no way that Todd will be able to cast either Karn or Endbringer on the following turn, the Karn potentially ever. So Bursavich going for the Relic, that's fine, at least for this turn. He won't get hit by the Endbringer for this 1 turn cycle for sure. And if he has something like a Tarmogoyf to follow up on the following turn or a Traverse, that's going to be online still. Stevens finds Eldrazi Temple off the Expedition map.
Right, so he does go that Temple route. Now remember, he's still... the Temple will bring him up to 5 mana. Now he has the Endbringer that costs 6. His hand here, Endbringer, Walking Ballista, and Karn. Karn's probably not even a card anymore at this point.
Right.
If the game lasts long enough for Karn to matter, we're doing something different. Now Todd does draw Matter Reshaper.
One of the more powerful payoffs for any Tron deck.
It's a chump blocker here. It might even mana accelerate him, which is nice.
It could even flip into another Matter Reshaper.
I love that.
A perpetual motion device.
That's scientifically verified. So he'll cast the Matter Reshaper off the top, says go. Gets to leave up Ghost Quarter. We did see from last game, it's pretty stock that Austin plays 2 basics, a Swamp and a Forest. Last game, Todd saw them both. He knew that once they were both in play, he did Ghost Quarter one of them, and Austin didn't have anything, so you should assume those are all the basics.
Right. And that's just generally going to be true of Death Shadow decks. They want to apply pressure to their own life total. Basic lands don't achieve these goals.
Sometimes you see a second Swamp, but that's pretty rare.
If you're particularly afraid of Blood Moon.
Yeah. It looks like there is an Abrupt Decay in Bursavich's hand. He could attempt to clear out this Matter Reshaper. It's not... I don't know if that card's getting any better.
Yeah, it's largely going to be in here to deal with Chalice of the Void. None of those have materialized.
So a fetch land in play for Bursavich. He'll swing with Shadow. I'm trying to decide if he wants to block here. There's some appeal. He has Endbringer in his hand. If he'd like to get 2 shots at land number 6.
It's also the case that if he blocks with Reshaper, finds land, cast Endbringer, then the Endbringer is vulnerable to Liliana of the Veil.
Sure. So in that case, he'd want to keep Reshaper in play and just needs that top card to be a land. Maybe the best play is to block with Reshaper, flip a Reshaper, and then draw the land.
That is,
I'm into that one.
That's a good play.
He is at 20, so Todd has some life points to give away. Right now, it is 6 damage that he would take. It could be more. And you're right, there is a Liliana of the Veil. So it looks like Todd took a hit off Death's Shadow. Austin might be pumping first. I'll be interested to see if he actually... If he wants to go for the full fetch shock here. Yeah, he's going to get a basic as he goes down to 6. 6 is 9, so Todd will take 7. There is some risk, right, of Todd just top decking a Reality Smasher here. If Austin were to have gone lower,
right,
he could lose to that. Austin has inflicted all 14 points on his own. He fetched for a basic and just said go. No Liliana. He's leaving up Abrupt Decay to deal with Matter Reshaper. Let me go back to Todd. Smasher might be his best draw. Both players also know that Todd has Walking Ballista in hand, so he's going to play it for 1. Will he swing with Matter Reshaper?
It didn't block last turn.
If you feel like it has to do one of them, right? If it wasn't blocking, it should be attacking, and Todd's going to make that play.
This forces Bursavich to consider your Reshaper on the following turn if it's able to connect.
Looks like he was holding up that Abrupt Decay to deal with it, so he'll decay the Matter Reshaper, flip a card. Urza's Power Plant. It's Todd's first Urza piece, but it is land number 6 for his Endbringer. Also on Todd's side, he actually has another Walking Ballista in his hand, and that could make things very interesting.
Yeah.
Austin's at a low enough life total. So Todd's got to decide, is it time for another Ballista on 1? And the answer was no.
I'm a bit curious about that. And one thing about main phasing that first Ballista, if he attacked first, he'd be able to cast this Ballista for 2. The way things are playing out, he's kind of leaving mana on the table.
Yeah, so you're thinking if he wasn't going to commit a second Ballista post-combat, then you might have attacked first.
Right.
Yeah, I do think this cost him 1 counter on his Ballista. There was a bit of missequencing there. This is something, I think Todd Stevens is one of the top players here on the tour. He's not the master technician of the tour. He's the master deck builder. So sometimes he'll miss a point here. He more than makes up for it in having phenomenal deck lists. So here's a swing from Bursavich. Todd is actually going to take damage again. He goes down to 6. And now here's Liliana of the Veil. Todd's played a very good game to neutralize this card so far.
Yeah, it's in a situation where if he -2s, the Ballista can just finish it off. So.
Right, so it'll be a +1. Todd easily gets rid of that Karn.
Yeah. Not casting this one.
Relic of Progenitus drawn for Todd. That doesn't do much here.
And Bursavich discarded his other basic land, so now Todd knows that he has a strip mine on the battlefield.
Well, Todd's in an awkward spot. That Death Shadow's lethal. And on top of the Death Shadow being lethal, if he plays Endbringer here, he's just going to chump his board away.
Yeah, I'll have to get in front of the Death Shadow, and then the Liliana can clean up from there.
Exactly. I guess... Oh, that's... No. Well, here's a thought. His Ballista could attack Liliana, put her to 3. Then he plays a Ballista on 2. Deals 2 more damage to Liliana. 1 with the tapped Ballista, 1 with the untapped. Things still aren't good here. That's probably still not good enough.
Yeah.
So he's going to need more. He'll play and crack Relic of Progenitus to try to find something. Urza's Tower, the draw. And he has to cast Ballista on 1. And he'll attack Liliana down to 3. Liliana -2 is good here anyway. What Todd may have been... If he could have gotten the... if somehow he'd have gotten the Endbringer to be a chump blocker, he could have hoped to have drawn Natural Tron and one-shotted Austin with the second Ballista. It's going to be hard now. So Liliana -2. Todd will sacrifice the tapped Ballista.
Well, it looks like Bursavich is showing Liliana the last hope, which if he plays in pluses, that's going to be game over.
That's going to do it. A plus -1 to the Ballista. Todd will extend the hand. It is Austin Bursavich in 2, winning in Modern. Obzon, Death's Shadow. And in Modern, it does seem, for the second time, Austin has Todd's number here. And Obzon is the winner.
We haven't seen too much Modern lately, but for my money, it still seems like Death Shadow is really where you want to be. There's still a couple different variations of the deck. We've seen Clay Spickelmeyer playing his 4-color Jund with blue Death Shadow.
Yep.
We have this Obzon build. There's a Grixis build. There's a different Grixis build.
And each of them have different things. We saw in that match of Spickelmeyer versus Shroud, Stubborn Denial was really important.
Yes.
So we're going to go over to another match. Now, remember, this is what Brennan DeCandio versus Tom Ross. It's in Standard. Once again, it seems like 2 players playing their specialties, which is what I love about this match. Brennan DeCandio is on Black-Green Delirium. He is 1 opens with this already this season. Tom Ross is on a Standard deck full of 1-drops, kind of 2 things that he specializes in. So they're in game 2. Tom won the first game. Let's get to the action. All right, we're actually going to pause as we need the players to, as the players get ready for the feature match. So on both sides here, yeah, Tom Ross on Black-White Zombies. Interesting to Tom Ross, I like that he always has different takes on these decks. So he's, one of the replacements he's made, the dub 2 Relentless Dead slot, Tom has cut those for 2 copies of Binding Mage.
Binding Mage, yeah, that's the Tapper Mummy, or that's the...
Yeah, no, this is the uncommon.
The cast out, or the innovation he has.
We'll go ahead and get you to the match. There's the players already here. Get to that in a second. So DeCandio versus Tom Ross. DeCandio at 7, Tom at 19. We see here on DeCandio's side, he does have a Kalitas going as he's at 8 life. Looks like that. He has 2 clue tokens and a zombie in play. Tom has 2 zombie of his own. His are a little bit better, though, as they're 4/4s.
If only Kalitas could eat Tom's zombies. Not exactly how it works.
Ishkana is going to come down, though, as a blocker for Brennan.
All right, so in the game here, are we going back to Brennan DeCandio, now untapping with enough mana to activate Ishkana Graph Widow. Tom's still at 16, though. With 2 Liliana Masteries on the battlefield, Tom's zombies are currently 4/4s, but attacking with this Kalitas gives Brennan the ability to just sacrifice a zombie, make that a 5/6.
Yeah, Brennan has a lot of blockers here. One thing they have to watch out, which we mentioned before at the Tom's XR, is 2 copies of Binding Mummy. That's a way that I guess Tom could tap out Brennan's blockers in this sort of situation.
Take a bit of work through this many spiders.
Activating of Shambling Vent for Tom Ross. Brennan will Fatal Push it. Gets a zombie. Kalitas still working here. This is looking like it might be a win here for Brennan. He's trying to stabilize with blockers and doing a pretty good job of it at the moment.
Well, this only gets through 1 of the zombies, right?
Well, what he did there is he blocked... the double mastery. So Kalitas traded with 1 of the zombies. Right, land step. Crypt Breaker, the play from Tom Ross. Over on the outside, Tannen Grace takes a win over Jody Keith, so that one's going to be going to 3. Brennan will crack a clue. Draws a Grasp of Darkness. He actually has 2 copies of Grasp in his hand, so he'll remove both of Tom's blockers and attack for 6. Tom will drop down to 10. No creature lands in play for Tom either, as Brennan adds a Vessel of Nascency. So this is a 1-turn clock, right? A swing and an activation will do it. 6 on the attack, 4 on the drain. Tom sees it too, and he picks up the cards for game number 3.
Yeah, just 2 basic lands in hand at the end there for Tom.
So they're going to go to a 3rd game. So I do want to look at some of the sideboard. Brennan DeCandio, certainly on Black-Green Delirium, somewhat rogue in the format and Standard, if I can even say that. This deck, it's very much fallen, like, what was it, 6 months ago when this was a very popular deck. Brennan has stayed with it quite a while. We see very little of this right now in Standard.
He's pretty much the only person that I know that plays it.
Yeah, we see some, like, the black-green took a very aggressive take, but Brennan just didn't follow it there. Looking at his sideboard, though, he's got some new cards. 2 copies of Scarab Feast. That's the 1-mana black card that exiles 3 cards from a graveyard. 2 copies of Stir the Sands. This is a 3-mana card that makes 3 zombies, or for 4 mana, cycles and makes 1 zombie. In addition to that, he has Dispossess. Actually, okay, these are we need to switch this. So I was like, that doesn't even make sense. You wouldn't play a Zombie Maker. These are switched here. So that's Tom Ross's sideboard. So that makes more sense. Stir the Sands as a late game card for Tom Ross. So flip those on the players here. On Brennan's side, he has Yeheni's Expertise as a sweeper. And looks like Gonti and Kalitas, which he's boarded in.
Yep, he has the extra copy of Never to Return, which can deal with some of these graveyard shenanigans potentially. If you're able to kill a Dread Wanderer and get that during your turn so they can't return it. DeCandio, again, might be the biggest player on Never to Return of anybody. He's really big on this card.
Well, it's an interesting one. The first half, very close to a Ruinous Path or a Hero's Downfall, so it's a pretty good card. The second half, that's a lot of mana to pay for that effect. So once it's a graveyard, you can pay 4 mana to exile a card and make a 2/2. Exile a card from a graveyard, which is, like, the rate on that is, I think, very weak. Right? 4 mana for a 2/2 that exiles 1 card. That's like something you'd want to pay 2 mana for.
Yeah, the design on the Aftermath cards out of Amonkhet largely seems to be, here's 2 cards. They are both spells. Neither of them are game-breakingly powerful, but you'll be happy. You'll feel like you drew kind of like 2 cards when you draw this spell.
Yeah. Well, in addition, I think what they do is they also combine really well in the sense that there's some synergy if on one turn you choose to play both. So the idea, I think, with Never to Return is if I paid 7 mana, it's basically exile target creature, you get a 2/2.
Right.
Which, okay, that feels like a 7 mana card.
Yeah, I'd put that in my draft deck.
Yeah, that'd be excellent in a draft deck. I do agree.
Might have to be an instant, but
oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean you play. Yeah, it's probably just no better than that. Be interested to see whether something like Declaration and Stone is in on Tom Ross's side. That extra push to stop Brennan from stabling with a card like Ishkana.
Yeah, being able to clean up those spider tokens can make a huge difference.
3 copies of Ishkana Graph Widow in Brennan DeCandio's deck list.
With the way Zombies is configured, though, with all these lords and pump effects, the plan might just be to out-muscle Ishkana.
All right, Tom Ross starts the game on a Dread Wanderer. For Brennan DeCandio, it's Blooming Marsh. Tom, at home with one-drop aggro, will be a second Wanderer. Does he have a second land, or is it just 2 Wanderers? It's just 2 creatures. And Brennan will Fatal Push one on end step. Seeing that there's no other mana source, that seems great.
And Tom neither has access to 3 mana, and it'll also be difficult to get his hand low enough to activate that Dread Wanderer. These mana woes, he's going to have to find land drops pretty quickly to be playing this game.
Walking Ballista for 1 from DeCandio. Tom did solve that. He's going to cycle Cast Out. Draws another Cast Out. He does have a Swamp. And Tom's kind of playing like he doesn't have a land here, but then he'll make the Swamp and pass. But a land behind here. And a real show of strength from DeCandio. He's going to actually attack with his Walking Ballista.
Yeah, I mean, activating and blocking are pretty much the same thing. Might as well get your point in. Not too concerned about taking the hit from that Dread Wanderer on the previous turn. So he has a Cletus in hand and basic Swamp, so at least that much mana rolled up, so he'll be able to do at least that much.
Yeah, I agree. You look at his hand, Kalitas. Already there's a payoff card. Grasp of Darkness and Yeheni's Expertise as well. So he'll continue to let hits trade. DeCandio drops to 14. And now Tom will make Lord of the Accursed. So this is actually neat. Tom post-combated Lord of the Accursed when he had a zombie in play. It will get met with a Grasp of Darkness. Do you have a sense of what he's playing around, though, by making that, by sequencing in that way?
I assume that it has something to do with the Wanderer is more likely to connect when you seek it this way.
Sure. If he plays the Lord, it might get shot by Walking Ballista.
Right.
Now Brennan will make his 4th land and tap out for Kalitas. Tom does have a cast out in hand. He was a land short of it last turn, and it looks like he's still a land short right now. But that's a card that has to go off the board if you're Tom. You can't let Brennan start killing your cards with upside if possible.
Right.
As far as removal, Tom has that 2nd cast out in hand. He has a possibility of Anguished Unmaking. Fatal Pushes, if he has it, is going to be really hard to trigger Revolt with Kalitas in play.
Right. He doesn't have anything like Evolving Wilds.
Right. And you see Tom in a bit of a predicament as he turns to teammate Boston Bursavich. If Brennan wins this game, it'll come down to Tannen Grace and Jody Keith. Tom cycles that cast out. And that was a really aggressive play there. That was his only, by cycling his one answer to deal with Kalitas. He was really going for something specific. He just passes now.
If at all possible, he would have liked to have dealt with it on this turn, but the black-white build
has trouble with that.
He's not playing Grasp of Darkness.
Well, and this is, I mean, there's just a great play on board for Brennan. He can put a mana into his Walking Ballista, kill the Dread Wanderer. That looks like a great turn.
Yes.
It's a good enough turn that Brennan might think it's a trap. But he's in a strong position. He'll just make the play. Ballista becomes a 2/2. Here's a tap land. Let's see, might as well remove the blocker. And Brennan trying to think, if this is a trap that Tom's setting, Tom's certainly a player who would set a trap. What could it be?
Right.
Like, I guess Fatal Push makes sense here. Tom would lose the zombie to answer the Kalitas. And because of that, Brennan's actually just going to pass. This is a really good line by Brennan. So Tom taps out for Liliana's Mastery. Now Brennan gets the zombie. I like the weight there on DeCandio's side quite a bit. Tom with a pair of 3/3s. Henny's Expertise doesn't care about 3/3s though, and
the only downside is he wouldn't be able to convert this zombie into a 5/6 Kalitas if he pulled the trigger right away.
Sure.
But he's still in a very solid position here.
Yeah, now keep in mind, if those 3/3s die on Tom's side, those don't get reanimated. Kalitas only reanimates non-token creatures. And I guess on Brennan's side, he's not under duress. You know, he can just land go. He's probably a favorite from that spot.
He's still at 14. The 3/4 lifelinker is larger than the 3/3 zombies.
And land go is basically his play. He does main phase, put a counter on Ballista, doesn't in case some sort of removal spell would happen. And now the game's getting interesting. Tom with a 2nd Liliana's Mastery now has upgraded his pair of 3/3s into 4 4/4s. They're now big enough to swing past Kalitas, and Brennan's going to have to do some thinking here.
They also no longer die to Yahenni's Expertise.
Yeah, that's true as well. I mean, Walking Ballista could help that along, but here's a swing for 8 from Tom Ross. This is a serious spot. And Brennan would have to preemptively ping a couple zombies, then Expertise through some more. It's not great.
And he won't have the mana to put another counter on the Ballista on the following turn before he Expertises, so it can only deal with 2 zombies.
Liliana's Mastery in multiple is a really scary card.
Yeah, it's the sort of card that I know when a lot of players first saw it, they thought, oh, whatever, limited card, but it has really demonstrated that it's a very powerful constructed Magic card.
Brennan blocks a zombie, and it looked with the Ballista, and it looks like it chose to shoot the remaining damage upstairs.
DeCandio's plan seems to involve sacrificing this zombie and slowly catching these zombies in combat.
Yeah. To go back to Brennan's main phase, we'll check on life totals here. I think Tom taking some Ballista damage, but things have gotten tougher for Brennan, and a game that looked like it was his for the taking. DeCandio's hand is Grim Flayer, Yeheni's Expertise, and then it looks like a Vessel or a Traverse. He's got instant, artifact, and creature in the graveyard. He's not on Delirium yet. Yeheni's Expertise as a sorcery would enable Delirium.
Wouldn't do too much otherwise, though, is the problem.
Right.
Now with that Ballista off the table, all that does is shrink the zombies for the duration of his turn.
So it looks like what he's trying to do is he wants to set up Kalitas to be a 5/6 lifelink blocker, and he's hoping Tom can't remove it.
Right.
Tom Ross, though, 4 cards in hand. He also has Lord of the Accursed. Make his team into 5/5s. It's almost enough to be lethal this turn through the block. Dark Salvation, a huge play from Tom Ross. Makes 2 zombies. It would kill Kalitas. Even if Brennan tries to sacrifice the zombie to it, it still dies.
Yeah, you would have to get rid of some of Tom's zombies to stop that from being the case.
And this is just so strong. Tom's supposed to be playing the aggro deck, and he had no threats going into turn 5, and that he can actually out mid-range Brennan's mid-range deck is a real impressive thing coming from zombies. You know, the part of the game where you slam mythic rares on turns 4, 5, 6, that's when Brennan's supposed to be winning the game. His deck's supposed to be excellent at that. Tom's keeping pace. And this is a lethal swing if Brennan can't do anything. Blocks 2 zombies, takes 8, goes to 2, does Brennan. Tom's got 5 4/4s.
You know, the zombie deck, there's not a lot of finesse to it. It's a lot of cards that are zombies or reference zombies. They just sort of hit the critical mass for enough cards that were on average really good relative to the format and combined to be even more powerful.
You know, when you see these decks, and I do want to really still, though, show where Tom Ross has strength. Some of the skill then in playing it, you saw, well, first of all, cycling the second cast out. There's some decisions there on Tom's side. Also, what you'll see a player like a Tom Ross or a Craig Wesco do in this situation is when they choose to attack and play their land, they sometimes can like represent strength and weakness to try to make certain blocks or certain attacks favorable in really small ways. And Tom Ross did just that. It's going to win the game, and for his team, it's going to win the match. Keith, Bursavich, and Ross will win on the backs of Standard and Modern.
Yeah, what you're saying, Tom did get in a couple attacks, some chip shots with the Dread Wanderer that